Tell me a little bit more about your new and emerging distribution platform.
Sure. We are right now in the public beta for a website called movietestscreening.com. Um, right now, we just have two films up. One is a found footage horror film. The other is a kind of midlife crisis, coming of age comedy drama.
Mhm.
Um, and We are going to be throwing two more up there in September, maybe three, but we're keeping the volume low right now just so the
Mhm.
testers can get in there and get used to it. But what it is what it sounds like, right? Movietestscreening.com. It's a place where you can um, submit your film, and then we will run it through the test screening process, right? But instead of in a cinema, we're doing it on a website.
Mhm.
One of the things that has been really key to us has been the security aspect of it, right?
Mhm.
Because as you know, this is that when people get to that phase and they start sending out all these links to everybody to trying to get a deal, that's really when the first kind of wave of piracy can
Mhm.
potentially happen to you, right? And leaking before you're even released is far worse than leaking after a release.
Mhm.
Um, and so security was a huge component of this platform, and it's something that we've been kind of working on in the background. But you know it, the real value that we're bringing is that we're going to give you a full breakdown of the demographics of the audience, right?
Mhm.
And beyond what existing testing services use today, right? So not only are we going to give you an insight into their age, race, ethnicity, what part of the country do they live in? We capture a lot of data from them from an intake survey, basically.
Mhm.
And we use that to kind of build what the profile of your ideal person to market to is based off of more than just those demographics, right? What
Mhm.
platforms do they use? How often do they use them? That type of thing, right?
Mhm.
So for filmmakers that do, decide to go a DIY route, they're not just firing off blanks into the dark, right?
Mhm.
And then also, of course, for distributors or sales agents, the same thing would apply, right? You're getting a little bit more targeted, data. And then, of course, with my background as an analyst, right, you're going to get a full blown kind of analytics survey. So it's not just going to be here's some graphs that shows you, how people felt about the pacing of the third act or whatever, right?
Mhm.
Um, but going in and actually connecting those different data points and pointing out, um, potential areas to improve it, right? Like, and we do things with like character analyses, right? And one of
Mhm.
the things that we do with the testers is we kind of break it down so that when they're answering these questions, they're separating the actor from the character, right?
Mhm.
And so the feedback they're giving is targeted towards whether it's a character issue or an actor issue, and we help extrapolate
Mhm.
and determine that, right? So for example, if there's a character that people just do not like, and then
Mhm.
they're also saying in act two it felt really long, right?
Mhm.
Well, okay, well in act two there was that scene with that character where they're arguing with the main character, the protagonist, for 12 and a half minutes or something, right? Well, that scene's got to go,
That's a
right?
long scene to begin with.
It's a
But
long scene. The people don't like the actor, right? So like you might want
so
to reapproach that.
are all of these just user self-reports, or is there some other sort of technical and API magic that you're using to track what people are track demographics, interests, and even just like how engaged with the content they are throughout the screening process.
Yeah, sure. So we use what we call a ticket ID, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really what it is it is a unique code that is identified to each person, and they
Mm-hmm.
use it as a passcode, right? So all the testers, they kind of punch that in to
Mm-hmm.
unlock the screener and watch it, the trailer or the film, whichever it is they're doing. They also plug that into the survey data. So it serves kind of a function of that's our anonymization, right? We
Mm-hmm.
don't have to pull their data, their personal data into survey results.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that ID also um, is what kind of stamps the forensic watermark, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it
Oh.
Yeah, so it is also the decryption key that runs off of a device token, right? So it's not in the stream itself. So each user ID or each ticket ID has a set number of devices, right? And we
Mm-hmm.
get rid of to kind of help mitigate, because there's no way to totally prevent piracy, right? But
Yeah.
to mitigate it, the process of assigning a ticket ID is manual,
Mm-hmm.
and the process of changing device registrations is manual. They have to reach out to us, right? And
Mm-hmm.
we have a phone number that they can text, they can call. We have after hours kind of bots responding. They're not going to do anything, but at least it will get logged and we can
Mm-hmm.
attack it first thing in the morning, right? Or if I'm having a sleepless night, since I don't get paid, I'm
Yeah.
gonna just check and be random and do stuff at night, maybe, right?
We've
But
all been there. Yeah.
but yeah, so that ticket ID kind of boom stamps that view, that session, right? And we can see how much of it they watched, if they kind of, switched it from a phone to a TV, right? So showing that it's maybe they're casting it, right? So we can see a
Mm-hmm.
lot of their behavior, we can see their completion. Um, all that sort of stuff is tracked, and we keep that a manual process so that
Mm-hmm.
there's really no way to game it, right? And before you can get that ticket ID, you have to fill out the what we call the internally, it's basically an intake form, right?
Yeah.
You got to give us all your kind of demos and your genre preferences, and what elements of a film's marketing draws you to watch it, right? Is it the cast? Is it video reviews? Is it word of mouth? Whatever, right? um, and then the reason also it's manual is so that we can check it and be like, does this seem like a person or a robot, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or is it someone just trying to come in and rinse repeat, and get that, because we do have incentives, right, to participate.
Yeah, that was my
uh,
next question, actually. How do you this seems like a decent time investment for the viewer, and
oh
I think
yeah.
somebody who's as somebody else who's been on the earlier sides of distribution, there are a lot of indie films that are out there that are crap, total and complete crap. And most people who just watch movies and aren't in the industry and aren't in an early acquisition round or a first round of a festival have no idea exactly how bad these movies are because they never got seen by people other than those people.
Right.
So if you're asking a layperson to in a test screening to do that, you're gonna have to incentivize them somehow. And I am curious about how you do that.
Sure. So, as it stands right now, what we're doing is their ticket ID, every time it's submitted on a survey, and because the surveys, of course, get reviewed. And if it looks like you just clicked through, or if you completed a survey and we can see that, you clicked through it,
Mm-hmm.
well, that doesn't count, right? You
Yeah.
you didn't watch it, you did it for the survey, right? But
Mm-hmm.
every successful survey that we actually verify and is good to go,
Mm-hmm.
their ticket ID is what they use to register for the survey. We use that as like a raffle ticket, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so you get thrown into a pot every month with anybody else who completed a survey,
Mm-hmm.
and it's only limited by the number of surveys that are available in any given month.
Mm-hmm.
Um, So, you could, if you watched everything, like right now, you could get 4 entries, right,
Mm-hmm.
in the month of August. And then we are going to do, starting in October, November, we're going to start doing giveaways. Um, be that gift cards. We're talking to some of the filmmakers about maybe doing some limited edition merch.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a good idea.
yeah, just to kind of really do that, and not just kind of massaging their egos, right? Like we're thinking about uh making shirts that say things like "I'm a tastemaker" or whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
And just giving it to them once they've completed a certain number of surveys, right? It's just kind of
Mm-hmm.
that type of thing. So we're incentivizing it that way, and then also we are in discussions with some other companies about doing some perks across the board, right?
Mm-hmm.
So discounts to certain services. One of the things, not to kind of get derailed too much here, but after building this platform and the tech stack that we had to build over the last 2.5 years to get here,
Mm-hmm.
um, we realized like we've got what we need to allow people to do their own online screenings too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe in addition to or in place of doing a theatrical screening that you have to four wall, right? And we're talking about independent creators who are just doing the thing for the cast and crew and their friends, right? Or in their
Mm-hmm.
local city. Um, you know, um,
Crowdfunding fulfillment would be a really good thing to do too.
yeah, and so marketing to those people and giving them a place that is going to that they can do it, right? Because we've already got this viewer authentication thing in place. We've already got the
Mm-hmm.
CDN, right? And we've already got that stuff. And so that would be an example of one of the perks, right? Is like anybody who's a tester can get 50% off on the
Mm-hmm.
platform or whatever, right? Um, so stuff like that. But yeah, we certainly need to incentivize them.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things too that we're very cognizant of is we want to talk to filmmakers about ways that they would like to engage with the testers too, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and so that's an ongoing discussion as well. But the limited edition merch is definitely one of the things that we're going to offer. And then maybe making things available to the filmmakers or to the testers from the filmmakers, like when the
Mm-hmm.
movie comes out, some sort of whatever, whether it's you know, I would say a copy of the DVD, but that's showing our age. That's not really a good perk anymore as it used to be. I'd still take it, but
I mean, I have watched 3 DVDs in the last week, so that is
yeah,
which is uncommon for me. But it's more uncommon for other people, I imagine. But
yeah,
yeah, no, I think you're right about. I think the biggest thing you could be doing to incentivize people is exclusive perks that are really rely more on clout. Like this is not a one-to-one comparison, but the idea that comes to mind are the YouTube plaques. Like you get one for 100,000, one for 250, maybe one for half and one for a mil. That and maybe one for 10, I don't know. But the something like that is an actual tangible physical object that is exclusive to this community. There's some power in that.
yeah, yeah.
Um yeah.
And I totally agree, and that's where my head is at too, because a lot of this, not to sound cheesy, but a lot of the concept behind this platform is empowering both really who our customers are for this platform, the testers and the filmmakers, right? We're
Mhm.
empowering the filmmakers with actionable data, actionable insights. Here's your audience. Here's what they look like. Here's what platforms they watch.
Mhm.
Here are some things to fix to make it even better, whatever the case may be. But also for the testers, we're empowering them with, like on our site, it says, have you ever watched a film and thought, I really liked it until the ending? Right.
Mhm.
Now you can say what you didn't like about it, and your feedback will be heard, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so just kind of giving that microphone, right, to someone who normally, is just going to post their feedback maybe nowhere, right? And if
Yeah.
they do, the filmmaker's not going to care. They post a review on Amazon like, "Oh, I hated the middle section of the film." Well,
Okay, if it's an indie filmmaker, most of them do care. I can't
they
tell
care.
you I can't tell you how many times it's been like this person's a jerk because of the thing there, and I happen to agree, but frankly, a lot of times, but frankly, the rating helped you no matter what. That would be another thing to think about there, is if there's any way to integrate with other public rating systems, because that is kind of how a lot of new user discovery is drawn these days. So,
Yeah, and we are looking at a couple of different API integrations. That's
mhm.
probably going to be like a phase 2 thing
Oh
next
yeah.
year.
Y-
Um, but we are definitely looking at APIs because there's a lot
mhm.
of, you know, there's a lot of API access out there to get.
Yeah, and there's a lot of there's a lot of value here, and there are several other points of the value chain that I could see. I mean, I know you're only at your public beta, you said, so
Yeah. So we're
still
still onboarding new
quite early. Yeah.
testers. Yeah, we're still onboarding new testers and just kind of getting them used to it. We're not taking orders from filmmakers yet. You can certainly sign up on a waiting list and we'll let you know as soon as you can. I think we're going to actually start allowing orders next month for filmmakers.
You mean in September?
Yep, in
There's a good
September.
chance that it'll be live by the time this goes live, because we're actually recording this towards the end of August right now.
That's true. I
So
keep forgetting that.
yeah, regardless, I'll drop a link for both the waiting list and to sign up as a tester in the description here, because it sounds like a really it sounds like it has the potential to be a gigantically valuable uh piece of tech and piece of a filmmaker's marketing arsenal.
Yeah, and our most basic package, which really kind of gives you the key insights like, did
Mm-hmm.
people like it? Are your marketing materials working? So your art, your poster, your synopsis, uh, are they going to talk about this, right? Are they going
Mm-hmm.
to tell other people? Are they going to post on social media, right? And the demographic breakdown. Those kind of four key components are even in our most basic package.
Mm-hmm.
And that package is going to be 2,500 bucks. And if you do, if you go look, there's nobody at that price point.
No, that's very reasonable. I can understand some indie filmmakers who made a $50,000 film getting sticker shock from that, but for this service, I've seen,
Way
uh,
higher.
yeah, normally
Yeah.
in the five figures, but that is
Yeah.
running a theater. But yeah, what made you want to make this platform?
Um, you know, just being just being kind of shell shocked by the
Mm-hmm.
sticker sometimes, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
as you know, testing is a really valuable thing. And there are certain buyers that will straight up ask you, have you tested this?
Mm-hmm.
Right. And
They tend to be the big boys, by the way,
right,
or big buyers, I should say. But yeah.
right. The big buyers will ask if it's tested.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tell them no, you know, if they're going to make an offer, it's going to be far below what they were
Mm-hmm.
prepared to do. If you had test data, because and what I explain to people is, and I'm sure you've talked about it on other episodes, but those
Mm-hmm.
guys are running a business, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't build a prototype in your garage and then just march that into Walmart and say you want this. They're going to say, has it gone through safety testing? Have you done market analysis, right? Oh, okay, with that data now we can make you this offer, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's a very similar, once you get to a certain price point, right,
Mm-hmm.
and a certain type of buyer, you got to have your basic product market research, and that's really what this is.
Mm-hmm.
And for us, it was just for me it was just more of looking at it and kind of going, wow, right? And what really the straw that broke the camel's back for me was we spent, I'm not going to say the company because they gave, the feedback was good, right? But we
Mhm.
spent $38,000 on a test screening that had, you know, a decent amount of participants, but they weren't asked a ton of questions, right?
Mhm.
And it was just kind of like, there's no reasonable explanation for why it costs this much other than it can, because what are you going to do about it? Right, like that's
Mhm.
kind of just one of those things. And but constantly, so when we started doing the research on it, we couldn't really find a whole lot out there even under $10,000.
Yeah.
And so just kind of that got my wheels turning, right? um and I just started digging into it and realized I can I can build something that can turn a profit for a far smaller cost point.
Yeah.
Um, and so that was back in 2019, late 2019, early 2020. And I've been slowly kind of chipping away at it ever since. And now this year is where it really got a lot of momentum. Um,
So this is all bootstrapped?
this is all bootstrapped. Yeah.
Oof. Um, Jargon note, self-finance. There isn't institutional financing behind it. But that's impressive. I used to work in tech. I was the CMO of a SaaS company, software as a service company for project management for the film industry. I have an idea of what tech spends are here and the time it takes, and the fact that you've done this in 2.5 years for something like this, where video and security are integral, is an impressive feat in and of itself. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, it has been bootstrapped for sure. And this year was really the first year where I finally got to that point to where accessible funds and that kind of lined up, and it was like, okay, we can now make the push, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um but yeah, bootstrapped. I did have investors initially, but we never formalized anything. And about 6 weeks ago, I told them, I'm good. Thanks, but no thanks. We haven't signed anything. You haven't really done anything.
They didn't give the money yet?
No.
Then yeah, I mean,
Well, they were really focused on, like, because they wanted to build a larger family of products, which is understandable, right? And they
yeah.
wanted this to be their first one. But we were getting so wrapped up in, let's talk about the brand identity for the overall brand, and then we'll focus on the branding for this site. And I'm like, what?
No,
No,
it's
no.
I still fall back to lean methodology, even though
Yeah,
it has its fault, it has its failure points, as evidenced by the supply chain issues we've had recently. But I still think in terms of building a software business, it's about the best you can. The which is just to say, start with a single product, get traction there, then expand and figure out how you're going to expand and better monetize. That
right.
was the not jargon way of saying what I just said. There is,
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
And the one thing I just wanted to say is I 100% agree with you. And what I told them was, the day where I told them, like, thanks, but no thanks, I'm moving on. I'm not going to wait for this branding crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was, what you got, because we were getting ready to launch beta end of July, early August, right? And it was
Mm-hmm.
in July where they were like, well, maybe we should push it off to like October, November. I'm like, and no, you guys aren't understanding how much this has cost me, right? Like, we need to get going, and there's no reason to wait, right? And so they were like, oh, we need to do the overall branding and think about the larger thing. And I said, what you guys are basically doing, not that I've built the next Google,
Mm-hmm.
but imagine if, you know, when they were about to launch the Google search webpage, and they said, hold on, we need to think about the branding for Android phones in a decade, right? We might be doing phones, so let's think about Android branding before we launch this search bar. And I said, if you think that this is different than that, give me an example. And they said, well, Adobe with all the Adobe products. And I said, those were all individual software before Adobe bought them up. They
Yeah.
were owned by Macromedia. And
Mm-hmm.
Macromedia didn't even start all those. They kind of bought them off piecemeal in the 90s. And then
Mm-hmm.
Macromedia sold to Adobe. So it's like, this is a horrible comparison because you guys think now you're just some big Titan buyer, and you're not.
No, you have to start as the scrappy asshole who's gonna go and do something different.
Right.
And the no, I completely agree. I'm not surprised to hear this story, if I'm honest. I've had similar experiences. Um, I do have one last question on this, and then we'll move to the final three, which is how does this affect Premier status? And how do you protect Premier status while using a system like this?
So all of our testers have non-disclosures, so
Mm-hmm.
they can't talk about it. They can't post on social. They can't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so it is very, it's a very isolated ecosystem. It's hard for someone to get in and see anything. And it's a very short run. Um, and a lot of times we're doing a version of the film that will probably never see the light of day,
Mm-hmm.
right? Our higher end packages do allow people to kind of go back with the results, make the tweaks, come back and show it again and kind of
Mm-hmm.
do an A/B comparison, but
Mm-hmm.
it shouldn't, because we're not doing any public release. No one's paying
Mm-hmm.
for it, and no one's going to talk about
It's true. I mean, so it falls into the same general camp as a buyer screening in a market
it. Mm-hmm.
where it's invite only, very limited access, and basically the only people who are there are either acquisitions people from distributors or festival programmers, and
Right.
that's so that makes sense. Um, but I have a feeling that would have ended up in the comments if we didn't do it now. But you can ask it anyway in the comments. I like comments.
Sure.
The